Dear Hertie School alumni, esteemed guests, cherished member of our wider Hertie School community, I am delighted to welcome you here to the Hertie Summit and Alumni Reunion 2025. And it does feel a little bit like the classroom experience because the front rows are empty and the back is full. So don't hesitate, at least if you find somebody, to move them into the front rows as well, so we have a closer sense in the discussion. It's really wonderful to see so many familiar faces back here, and I'd like to especially welcome those of our alumni who've really traveled across the globe to reunite with us here in Berlin. Your presence truly enriches this event, and we're excited to celebrate our shared journey and use this opportunity to be back in the university that you've all passed during the years of your study. Before I go over to one of the many upcoming highlights of the summit, the presentation of our Alumni Achievement Award 2025, let me start with some words of appreciation. The summit is organized with a collaborative effort by the Fellows and Friends initiative of the Hertie Foundation and our dedicated Alumni Affairs team. It serves not just as a gathering, but as a vibrant forum for connection, learning, and dialogue among diverse groups and a celebration of the open and inclusive spirit of the Hertie community. With over 500 participants and more than 50 sessions on a wide range of relevant topics featuring Hertie School alumni and faculty, as well as members of the other Hertie networks and external speakers, this promises to be an enriching and memorable community experience. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to all speakers for sharing their knowledge, their time, and some Hertie love and making the next days unforgettable. I'd also like to acknowledge our Fellows and Friends and Alumni Affairs team, because really your hard work and dedication have once again been instrumental in bringing this all to life. Looking back at the past year, we celebrate significant milestones in our global alumni engagement. First of all, we witnessed the growth of our alumni network, which now consists of 16 local chapters and 5 local groups. We're also looking forward to having the network grow by a great number of new alumni next week once we're done with graduation. But that is almost mechanical, so I don't want to mention it here. A particularly exciting achievement during this time was the launch of our Pan-African Alumni Network, which strengthens our connections across the continent. The last months were further characterized by a great number of initiatives and community commitments of over 200 alumni who have stepped forward to support the Hertie School as volunteers, including alumni council members, local chapter leads, connectors, mentors, and event speakers. And I've seen that that is what many of you here in the room have done, so thank you very much for this engagement. Together, we hosted more than 60 events in 20 cities worldwide. These are the connections that strengthen the fabric of our community by bringing together alumni, students, faculty, friends, and leadership. As we moved forward into this weekend of activities, I invite each of you to embrace the many networking opportunities that await. Engage actively, learn from each other, and draw inspirations from the rich tapestry of experience that will be shared. These ideas of lifelong learning, community building, and innovative partnerships across continents are at the very heart of what is essential for us in the Hertie community and here in the Hertie School. Finally, I would also like to extend a warm invitation to our homecoming brunch on campus this Sunday, June 29th from 12 to 2:30. We hope that you find the time for a delightful gathering featuring a policy slam, a photo exhibition, and an array of delicious foods. It's a great opportunity to reflect on our ideas and on what the future we are building together may hold. Now, let's move to the award ceremony. As we gather here today, celebrating our collective achievements and embracing connections with the Hertie School community, it is only fitting that we take a moment to recognize an outstanding member among us. This event is not just a celebration of the past, and you know we spend a lot of time understanding the past. It is also an opportunity to shine the light on those who are actively shaping tomorrow. I'm therefore proud to announce that Claudia Müller is the recipient of the 2025 Hertie School Achievement Award. This is an accolade that recognizes her unwavering commitment to closing the gender gap in financial literacy. Claudia, a graduate of our Master of Public Policy program in 2012, so in the early years, and a former student of economics, has embarked, this was not to make you feel old, but it was just to tell us we're strong of the condition. Claudia has embarked on a remarkable journey since. It was during her tenure at the Deutsche Bundesbank, Germany's central bank, that she discovered the vital intersection of sustainable finance and women's empowerment. It was a personal revelation, helping her father make sustainable investments and a conversation with a friend seeking financial resources tailored for women, that sparked her transformative idea. An initiative dedicated to women teaching women about finance, particularly in the realm of green investing. Therefore, in 2017, Claudia founded the Female Finance Forum, an organization that embodies her vision of empowering women through financial literacy and sustainable investing. Under her leadership, the forum has created accessible learning opportunities for women, teaching them essential skills ranging from budgeting in stock investments, all while emphasizing the importance of sustainability. One aspect I'd like to highlight is how Claudia has innovatively approached employers, offering courses during staff working hours, thereby centering inclusiveness and breaking down barriers that often prevent women from accessing financial education. Moreover, Claudia's impact extends beyond adults. She is the co-author of the book Über Geld spricht man doch, wie Kinder spielerisch einen guten Umgang mit Geld lernen. Let's talk about money, how to teach children a playful way of learning about money. I was translating myself, which serves as a guide for parents on teaching their children financial literacy. Claudia's work is a true testament to public purpose in the private sector. Through her innovative initiatives, Claudia is not only addressing gender disparities, but also building community resilience and empowerment. Today, we celebrate these achievements. Dear Claudia, I am proud to present to you this year's Hertie School Alumni Achievement Award. Congratulations. And we will meet here so I can ask her some questions and let her tell us more. So Claudia, I mentioned that you had some personal moments where you realized this is what you wanted to do, and it sounded very calm, but I'm pretty sure it was also a series of frustrations. Can you tell me about some of the moments where you realized this is an initiative that was needed?
So before I started it, I have to be diplomatic about it because there were some frustrations. One was, honestly, I was working at the German central bank, and the German public sector was difficult for me. So it was, you might talk about security. I perceived it as rather, very hierarchical and strict. So just the way of working was just not for me. So I was kind of looking for a way out, but didn't just want to take on another job, any job, but really because I was in terms of what I was working on, it was the best job I could imagine. I was working on green finance during the German G20 presidency, so it was perfect for a political economist from the Hertie School. And so I knew that I needed something really cool in order to leave the central bank. And actually the really eye-opening the eye-opening happened during 50 interviews I conducted with women about how they actually manage their money. And I started off just talking to basically anybody who would talk to me about money, and then narrowed it down in order to talk to women. And there were so many women telling me that they don't know how much they even have on their bank account, or never ever talking about investments, and that they were aware that they would not be able to leave their partner right now if anything happened, because they just simply could not afford to leave their partner. And that was something where I thought, okay, this really needs to change. So it's not only about the gender pay gap, that is something we talk about quite a lot, but really the gender investment gap is, in my opinion, at least as severe.
And so you set out to change something about this, but also with an emphasis on sustainability, on green investment. Now let me provoke you a little bit and ask you how you feel the two are connected, and isn't green investment something that's going to fall out of fashion pretty soon?
Yeah, well, this year has not been the best for sustainable investments, absolutely. But I actually would reframe it as future-proof investments, because climate change is not ideological, it's science. And also it's proven that companies with a diverse labor force, they have higher economic returns than companies with a very homogeneous workforce. So it's only smart business to actually focus on the different aspects of sustainability. And yes, absolutely, gender equality is one aspect of sustainability. So those two they are kind of intertwined. First of all, because gender equality is one aspect of sustainability, and secondly, because women tend to be more interested in sustainability than men. Also because they tend to think more about future generations, etc. And actually, the past, except for the last half year, shows that the sustainable investments have always brought higher returns than traditional investments, because, happy employees tend to do better work than unhappy employees. It's very simple business. You have less scandals if companies have to act transparently. So it's a lot of common sense behind it. And I am convinced that also this too shall pass. We will see different times. Right now it's a bit difficult, and that has actually been a huge frustration for me. So the last half year. But I am absolutely certain that we will see other times, because, as I said, it's not about morals, it's not about opinions, it's simple science.
Excellent. Can you tell us a little bit more about the challenges women face when they're trying to prepare their financial future and realize they have difficulties accessing some of the information, or there is simply a gap in financial literacy? How does your initiative help to overcome the particular obstacles that you see in real life?
So it all starts really young, because studies show that parents tend to talk more to their sons about money than to their daughters. Mothers don't talk about money at all. So we have the gender gap already from childhood on. But then we've only had 50 years of women being allowed to even have a bank account without asking some man for permission.
In Western Germany.
In Western Germany, yes, absolutely. So Western Germany is behind.
I like to wave the flag of Eastern Germany just every once in a while.
Absolutely right. So the gender retirement gap and gender whatever gap is a lot smaller in Eastern Germany than in Western Germany. It is increasing in Eastern Germany as well, unfortunately. But yeah. So women were allowed, especially in Western Germany, it's been a short time that women are even allowed to open a bank account. Learning about investments is not something women are trained to do. So women are always taught how to spend money, right? If you look at women's magazines, it's always about the next fashion, etc. You can always learn how to spend or see how to spend money, but how to invest it doesn't happen. Plus, my favorite example of how we are all biased or whatever is the pedestrian zone sign. It's always a woman walking with a child. It's never a man with a child. So apparently only women can go for a walk with children. I don't know whether men are not allowed or not capable of, but they don't do it. And the really shocking thing to me is we used to have the sign father with child, and it was, at least in Western Germany, I don't know what about Eastern Germany, but we got rid of that sign, a man walking with a child, which still exists in Austria, for example, so really exotic places. We got rid of that sign with the official reasoning that we don't want to provoke pedophile thought. So yes, we need to talk about female finance, but we please also need to talk about the picture we have of men. Let fathers be fathers. But anyways, when you are taking care of a child, you don't get paid for that labor. Whereas if you go to an office, you get paid for your work. So that's where the main gap actually comes from. It's not so much the 16% gender pay gap, but it's the 39% pay gap, which we have if we take into account part-time work. And then we have the whole societal vision behind it of the man being the breadwinner and also investor for the family, the woman being the caretaker, etc. So yeah, and then we end up with women not knowing how to handle things, not knowing how to talk about it, etc. So what we do is really but at the same time, women don't know how to talk about money, but they do know that there is a need for them to invest. So everybody has heard of the retirement gap, has heard of poverty during retirement age, etc. So to throw in some numbers, the average retirement pay for women in Germany, all of Germany, is at 942 euros per month right now, 2023. And then you still pay health insurance and taxes, whereby taxes are not really significant. So we know that we need to do something, but we don't know how to. And the first thing we do is to create a safe space and really say that's why we have a women-only events normally. And as you said, targeting employers so that the employees can simply just get there during working hours, having really low entry barriers, just talking about money among females. There's no man mansplaining anything. There's no, of course it's not all men, but as soon, again, statistics show that girls at school tend to have worse grades during their math exams when there's only just one man in the room. Whereas if the man is not in the room, they have better grades. It's crazy how strong these different systems work. And sorry, I'm going all over the place, but it's so many interconnected topics. And so what we do is creating the safe space and really talking about the topic in just very normal language, explaining step by step what to do, and also making clear you don't need much money, you don't need much time, you don't need much knowledge in order to get started, but you do have to get started.
Excellent. And even though I was provoking you with other questions, I do want to underline that this is really a very important task and plug a little bit of advertisement for Hertie School Research. We have our professor of sociology, Michaela Kreinfeld, just published a research finding this week on domestic violence that showed quite impressively how significant the difference is between financially independent women in a partnership at the moment of separation and financially dependent women. So it goes all the way to physical violence and, of course, also sorts of other hurdles. So again, this is just why you deserve the round of applause. I do have one last question, and that was about the children that you also addressed, the financial education children get and possibly financial literacy that you can teach to children, as you do in your book, at an early age. And I know you've also commented and thought a lot about what can happen in schools in the transmission of literacy early on. And since we have a lot of our alumni coming from different countries, I would like you to tell us what are your favorite examples of early financial literacy education in other places that may work that you think should be an inspiration.
So one example, which is not early, sorry, but I'm getting to that. Singapore has a financial health clinic, and every year you can get a checkup on your financial health. This is something I absolutely love. You know, going to the Verbraucherzentrale or whatever once a year and just have a financial checkup would be so fantastic. So that is one of my absolutely favorite examples for adult education or financial checkups. And Denmark is excellent in young people literacy. They have one of the highest financial literacy rates in the world. And they just have it as a normal subject in school. They learn about money management. They learn about, the different gender approaches, actually. They learn about investing. They learn about all these things. And it's just a totally normal topic. So it's, in Germany, it's very much surrounded by shame or other weird feelings. And there it's, they just talk about it quite normally.
Excellent. I think there are a lot of reasons to recognize that this is really important work. So again, congratulations on this year's Alumni Achievement Award, and good luck with the work that still is ahead of you.
Thank you.
And we'll move smoothly from this discussion to our next discussion. So I would like to call the panelists for the following discussion up on stage with me so we can continue. So, and with this, we now move to our opening panel, Transformation and Trust, Rethinking the State in Germany. This is the opening of the Hertie Summit, and we're doing it here. And we're doing it on a topic that I think is not only also really relevant for society, but something that the Hertie School, since its founding, has had as an ambition. How do you reform government? How do you reform public policy? How do you make sure that the state and public administration can be effective, agile, and future-proof, to use Claudia's words? We have a wonderful panel with us today. On my left is Martin Klingst, a trained lawyer, longtime journalist for the Zeit, who's also a US correspondent, and who then turned speechwriter for the German president. So if you've ever heard the German president say important things on various topics, they came out of the pen of Martin Klingst for some time. He's written 3 books and currently leads a project that we host here at the Hertie School that is funded also by the Hertie Foundation and 3 additional foundations. And as an executive director, it's the Initiative for an Effective State that we will talk about at length today. On his left, we have Nuria Köchling, who works at the intersection of policy and technology and is focused on digital rights. She has gained experience in the EU Parliament, in Germany's Labour Ministry, and in public sector consultancy. And she studied in Berlin and Oxford and just now completed and will receive her diploma from me on Tuesday for her MPP at the Hertie School. Thank you for being with us. Now that I announced that if something goes wrong, I'll still give you the degree. Next to Nuria, we have Michael Schönstein, who's the head of digital policy at the German Chancellery, advising the Chancellor on digital affairs. He co-chairs the OECD AI Futures Group and coordinated Germany's AI strategy and lectures also widely on digital governance. You realize people who are interested in reforming the state are very interested in digital governance questions, and there's a reason for it. We'll see later how these two link up. Michael Schönstein has previously worked in the ministries on social policy and health and also at the OECD. Thank you so much for making time to be with us today. And on the very far left is my dear colleague, Professor Thurid Hustedt, who is the Dean of Graduate Programs and Professor of Public Administration at the Hertie School. And I see her probably 5 times a day to talk about Hertie School governance. But when she doesn't answer my question, she really is passionate about public administration and management and is a real expert on public sector reform with a lot of insights from countries elsewhere. She's previously held other positions in public administration in Berlin, Potsdam, Bergen, and Toronto. So With this introduction now out of the way, I would really like to dive in quickly into the project that, Martin, you have led with 4 initiators, 4 foundations, I don't know how many collaborators in the working groups, you'll tell us, where we have produced I don't see it around. I would love to wave it. We have it. We'll wave it and send it around.
There's a slide somewhere.
Oh, there's a... Oh.
There should...
We have... there's a report that's produced from the Initiative for an Effective State that you can access here if you look at the QR code. That is the midterm report. You will see the final report anytime very soon now. Have you pushed it away from your desk yet, or are you still...
Not yet.
Okay.
We're in the midst of it.
We're just about ready there. And Martin, please tell us what this initiative was and what you took away with it.
Yeah, thank you, Cornelia, for a kind introduction. Hello, I'm glad to be here. And I just dive into the initiative. The whole thing started last summer, summer 24, with 4 people coming together, 2 former ministers, or you would say, if you come from the United States, you would say secretary. One was the Secretary of Finance, the other one was Chief of Staff of Angela Merkel, and later on Secretary of Defense and also of Interior or Domestic Security. And one was a media manager, and the fourth one was the former president of the German Constitutional Court, which is our Supreme Court. So the 4 came together and said there's something wrong in this country, and we are afraid that democracy might fail. And one of the pillars of democracy is a functioning government. So what can we do to make the government or the state functioning again? And when they all came together, they said, okay, we have a year till the next government will be elected, but then the former government collapsed, and we had to get much faster. So last fall, they asked me if I could take over the management of this initiative, and we started in finding people to found 7 working groups. So the 7 working groups, and we knew that we will have gaps and lacks, and there will be empty spaces because we cannot cover everything that makes a government efficient. So we have to concentrate on certain subjects and delete others, even though they might be important, but our time is limited, our capacities are limited. So let's start with 7 working groups. And I just mentioned them. There's security and resilience, public administration, federalism and legislation, the digital state, economic competitiveness, climate, social state and education, and general conditions for successful social change. So we had to find people for those 7 working groups, experts, who actually come from all walks of life, from all parts of the society, from federal, state, and local governments. We started to come together, and then we found a gender gap. There were too many men, as I can say, also in this initiative, 3 men and 1 woman, and then me as the general manager, the 4th man. So we revised it, and at the end of the day, at least 45% of the participants are women. We have 54 people in 7 working groups, and they are of different ages, as I said, from different walks of life, also different professions and different ages and gender. So when we started, we thought, okay, we have to concentrate on certain questions. We had, with every working group, at least 3 to 4 digital meetings that lasted around about 2 hours each. We made a protocol of every session, and to find, the common results of one session, what you can agree on, and what are the proposals. So shortly before Christmas, we found out, okay, those discussions were great, but some of the results are not precise enough. we need to put in more work and get into the details of the proposals. So we asked all 54 members to actually put in writing their thoughts how in their field of expertise things should change. We got actually 85% of them responded. We put it all together. And then at the end of the day, we started in February of this year to draft the final report, because the new election happened in February. The coalition talks of the new government started in March, and we had to get ready when the coalition agreements or talks started. So actually to influence the process. So at the end of the day, we came with 30 proposals. It was put into this report, and we were surprised actually by the reception. And what I forgot, the German president was a patron of the whole thing, and we presented the report to him in March. Then we were actually received by the leading figures of the new coalition. They took a lot of time to talk with us in detail about our proposals. We were also invited to some of the working groups of the coalition in order to discuss more in detail what we have proposed. Also, a couple of state governors invited us to talk about it, because we are a federalist or federal society, federal state, and the federal states have a lot of power, and we propose also centralization in some of the issues to get it done. So they wanted to know our proposals. And we were also widely received by the press, a lot of media coverage. Our four initiators went to all the famous talk shows on public broadcasting system, and they were, you know, up and down the road. You could see them. And our proposals made it into the coalition treaty. So at the end of the day, we've found out that about 70% of our proposals, in one way or the other, were actually met by the coalition agreement. One of the biggest proposals was a new Ministry for Digitalization and State Modernization that was formed, and actually a lot of our suggestions what this ministry should do, especially in the field of digitalization, were adopted. State modernization, there's still a lot left to be done. It does not meet actually our proposals 100%, not even 50%, but there's a lot of actually remains to think about. So now, to make it short, we are in the second stage now. We will come up with our final report next month. We will present it to the German president on July 14th. And we are now drafting the final report. We will meet the four initiators, and the management team will meet to actually, you know, put it in place. And what is new about the final report is that we first of all reflect our proposals in the light of the coalition treaty. So what has been adopted, what has been left out, what needs to be picked up, and what is actually left to be done. And we have also invited more than 50 alumni of 3 of our foundations that support us, so young professionals in the field of administration, science, and business, whom we have asked to answer certain kinds of questions that we've delivered to them, and to answer, you know, and to look at our proposals in the light of their expertise. What do they actually think it's okay? What do they criticize? What have we left out? Because we wanted to have this young expertise, because it's about the future. You know, we talk a lot about the past, but this initiative is actually about getting things done and looking to the future. So we wanted this voice, and we are overwhelmed by the results. Of those 50-something we have asked, 36 have answered in detail, and we've also, in addition, had digital meetings with them in order to discuss their proposals. And a lot of them, what they've thought, will also, be reflected in the final report. So the initiative will end its work in July because the 4 initiators said, with good reason, we have given the impulses, we've given the ideas, so now it's the people in politics, in the ministries who have to act. We are, as this initiative, we have no mandate to control the government. So we just, out of our engagement, we wanted to, do things or to have things done better than we've done them before. But now the people who actually have the power to act need to act. So the initiative will stop, and that does not mean that some of our proposals will be picked up by some of the foundations and be carried on in a monitoring system. But the initiative, I think, has done its work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me just take up, I just want to underline how impactful this initiative was. This is very unparalleled to anything I know, and I don't know if you in the room have seen a lot of initiatives that get cited by name in a public document. The coalition contract is very detailed, strong on vague language in a lot of passages, but literally had, please translate all of the proposals of the initiative for an effective state into actual policy proposals. So this is really outstanding in terms of impact. And I also would like to cite, for those of you who follow German television, that the media impact was massive, but even made it into late night comedy shows like the Heute Show, where they got their own little board with Voskuhl and the gang writing a report that now the German public should be aware about. So really, in terms of impact, I don't think anybody can ever live up to the standard you set this year, and we're very happy to have the involvement of our alumni, of the Mercator Fellows and of the Bucerius alumni as well, so that there is a generational spread from the initiators who are more senior in their career to the younger perspective on some of these proposals. Congratulations again on this. And Nuria, you have worked on this project in your studies, and we know that students are excellent at poking holes and being critical in what they see, and you've really been in the machine room. I'd like you to tell us what you took out of that experience, and possibly if you have a favorite proposal that you really think everybody should work on right now with great urgency, or other things you want to take out of this.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for inviting me. So my role is kind of like dual here. I'm a proud alumna of the Hertie School, and also was working or am still working until end of July for the initiative as a research assistant. And so I was kind of like accompanying this whole process, thinking it would all be a bit slower, and then it really took on some speed with the government collapsing, as we already heard. And yeah, I think just to add to that, I mean, I don't know if everyone in the room has heard about the report or knows what is in there, but there are 30 different recommendations because we told ourselves that you can't possibly go into every topic. Obviously, you really need to kind of like zoom out, take a meta perspective, and then say, what are the mechanics that need to be given in order for government to work or for a state to work effectively? And so in the end, obviously, these 30 recommendations do have topics. For example, migration, or something like digitalization, like the ministry that was also implemented now. But it's still like very much going into this meta space and looking what is actually really needed to have a functioning government. And from my favorite, or the reform that really, or the recommendation that is kind of like a reform that really was the one that spoke to me mostly, was one that is found in a chapter that's called Principles, which is the best, I think, of this report. It comes in the end. Best comes always in the end, maybe. It's the last 4 recommendations. They are all called Principles. And the recommendation is, I'm just going to read this. A capable state meets its citizens and businesses with a Vorschuss an Vertrauen, a presumption of trust. So really kind of like giving already like trust before asking for much. And if we look at the title of this panel, transformation and trust, I think these two are really intertwined, right? So real transformation needs public trust, and trust grows when reforms resonate with people's everyday life. And from my dual perspective, so as a Hertie alumni and also working in this initiative, the most urgent reform, I think it's not technical, but it's really like principled. So we need a default mode in public administration, one that starts with a presumption of trust in citizens and also in businesses. And so I think it's not about being naive. So it's about more like recognizing that most rules were created for good reasons, and it's good to look at the history and look at the original purpose, why they were created. For example, to solve problems, to make things fairer, more accountable, more transparent. But over time, particularly in Germany, and I say this as a German myself, it seems like we've added layers of regulation without really questioning the original purpose of the rule. And the result are excessive proof requirements. I think you've all heard about this, duplicated processes, frustration, especially for those who act in good faith. So big part of the society acts in good faith, and I would say is very well willed and wants to act well and contribute. And so it's not a choice between strict control or no rules. I don't think that there's like this dualism. I think we need to understand the purpose of each rule as it stands, and then think about how we can make it easier or like simplify it. And as a guiding principle, really trust people by default and check only where it's needed. That is the recommendation 27 in the report. And if we take the example of self-employed workers in Germany, many must still really submit piles of paperwork just to get their basic financial benefits. And our report proposes to reduce this burden significantly and instead use randomized audits to enforce real sanctions in rare cases of abuse. So I think that's how we wanted to show how noticeable relief can be created for citizens, but also for administrations, because they obviously also have a burden, and you will all know about this as alumni and alumna from the Hertie School. They also carry a burden there. And I think for us in the room as Hertie alumni and alumni from across the globe, and I think this can be more difficult in some regions than in others, what would be really great, I think, is if we go and we believe that we can help shape systems that do not mistrust the many because of the few, and if we build strong, capable states, wherever we are in the world and wherever we're going to be, states that earn trust by giving it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nuria. Let me move to Michael Schönstein, who's already gathered several experiences of trying to engineer social change or policy change, and I would suspect, like most people, with some frustrations when the ideas hit reality of what is actually doable and what the obstacles are. So can you share with us some of the reality checks you've had to go through when you were trying to move forward on engineering these changes and making the German state more effective and more agile, and what you would suggest going forward to overcome these hurdles?
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, first of all, for the invitation. And I find our discussion slightly reminiscent of Hertie seminars, where we had very deeply idiosyncratic discussions about Germany in front of a relatively international audience. So bear with us. But I think that there may actually be some resonance, I think, also in other countries, I think, of the topics that we're discussing here in Germany, although I personally consider us a particular laggard in many of the issues that we're looking at here today through the lens of the initiative that I think, yes, has been perceived very, very highly and very impactfully. The recommendation I'm dealing with most right now is the building up of this Ministry for Digital and State Modernization. The area I've coordinated for a couple of years already, and I'm continuing to do at the Chancellery, is digital policy. So this is not the digitization of administration and administrative procedures, but data regulation, AI regulation, innovation fostering in those areas, supporting innovation and new technologies in the digital space, that stuff. And all of this is also moved in the ministry. And right now, one very quick reality check: the recommendation is easily done. And it responded, I think, to one of the deep frustrations we had in the last legislative period, where we being my team, quite exceptionally, I think, for the Chancellery, had to deal with a total of 6 different ministries. So I also staffed my team with people from each of those ministries. Normally you mirror one and you staff your people from there, and they know everyone there, have been working there for 10 to 20 years before they joined the Chancellery, and then you have easy going. That was not the case for us. So over those years, I have come to be also convinced that, yes, we do need a moment of consolidation in the form of such a ministry. For example, right now we're doing it, and it's like you're asked to put together a puzzle, except many pieces are missing. It turns out that actually the pieces you have probably come from 3 different sets of puzzles, and you're meant to put them together, with a blindfold on. That's a bit the situation we're in right now. We have also, I think, we've had in this report many issues picked up and condensed, focused, that have been discussed in different policy circles for quite a while already, and I think this is one of the reasons why it was received so well, and so because many people saw that finally there's one place that ties it together. And I think that's been tremendously helpful. But in modernizing the state, I think we have to be aware of a few things. I would say, first of all, I mean, I'm a bit more optimistic than I am frustrated, because I mean we have to be, right? Things have to get better. They do, because we're not starting from scratch. So I think this is one thing that I find very important. It's not that, we had this complete catastrophe of administration here, then comes ideas that we've never had before, and now everything gets better, in the blink of an eye. My perception has been that demographic change is helping us a lot, in that we've actually had a really big turnover of staff over the last 10 years in public administration. Maybe actually less so in the federal ministries that I know than in agencies and in the regional, the Länder, and the municipal administrations. But a lot of turnover, and that's led to new cohorts entering the civil service. And I think my personal impression, this is really just from working across different ministries for a while, is that there's really been a groundswell of desire for change from the people that work inside the system. And I think that's a really, really good precondition for actual change. There is the broad perception of many people who work in administration is we want things to change. And I think that's really been driven to a large extent by an influx of highly trained, very motivated, very capable people, for example, from the Hertie School, that give this change capacity that I think we were lacking before. So that makes me quite hopeful. I also think we already see, let's say, pockets of the future, unequally distributed across different parts of the administration. We set up a unit, a matrix organization at the Labor Ministry in 2018, where we did crazy things like we didn't have divisions anymore. We had competence teams. We organized topics in a matrix organization by staffing them from the different competence clusters we had, working then on topics such as platform work or AI regulation, you name it. That worked pretty well, and in doing so, I think we were, first of all, quite productive. The KPI I use for that is that anyone who worked in one of our teams usually dealt with teams in other ministries. So you had a ratio of one person from our team on average dealing with 4 to 5 in other parts of the federal administration. And at the same time, I think we managed also to be lean in the sense that we actually cut a hierarchy layer, which is, sounds very little, I think, in other countries, but for Germany that's a tremendous no-go because you give up very well-paid positions like that. We did that, and it works. To this day, it works. There's others around. There's a cyber innovation hub in the Defense Ministry, for example. They also did quite interesting things in different organizational setting. And I think there's been a very good study from the Hertie School looking at those different initiatives as well. So I think that's actually been interesting. That said, I think there are different challenges we need to address, and not all of them are easy to talk about. I think next to the structural issues that you point to a lot, and some of the staffing issues that some of them you do point at, others you don't. I think we also have to talk about the quality of political decision-making in Germany. I think we're very, very bad at ending projects. That is an absolute problem here. And the area I work in, I want to give you one example. You may hear a lot of talk about digital sovereignty, being worried about, having a moment of digitization of administration that coincides with technological dependency on actors from outside the European Union. One of the issues that are particularly important are cloud capacities. Can you, if you want to digitize a public service, at some point in your stack, you probably need some kind of, you have some use for a cloud service, whatever, in whatever way, in the most broad sense possible. We have 8 different initiatives to get the federal administration a sovereign cloud service. 8. Why do we have 8? Because they all failed. And every time one of them failed in its own targets, you started the next one, but actually didn't end the failed one. So now we have 8 parallel ones. They're very, very expensive. We're spending a lot of money for exactly no result. So 8 initiatives, 10 years down the line. I haven't yet found out how much money we actually spend on those, but it's a lot. I'm not sure I want to find out. This is usually, if you ask a question, sometimes you get an answer, and it's not always pretty. So, I wouldn't be surprised if it was approaching €1 billion. So, this is an incredible decision-making problem as well. Yeah, can we shed our old layers? And I think that's something we also need to look at critically, and I think that's also something that the initiative still needs to do, especially its former decision makers could question a little bit more what their reasons were to embark on, for example, 3 of those 8 initiatives that I just mentioned that came from one of those decision makers, who might reflect a little bit about why that actually happened. Because I think there are good reasons. It's not about blaming. It's really about understanding the systemic issues. And so I think in going forward, we'll have to build up our capacity in this new ministry. I think we need to address the hard issues as well. And I think maybe we should also be a little bit careful when we talk about state modernization, about vested interests that seek state administration as a blueprint for destroying state capacity because it's in their way. That does exist as well, and I think that's a small but sometimes resourceful group of actors in at least the German space that one needs to be aware of as well. So I think that's quite an interesting debate to be had as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Michael. When you shared your optimism on the HR, the demography and the HR innovations, I was getting worried that you would be too positive, but thankfully we got a lot of cynicism out of the buildup of initiatives, so we see that there's still some work to do, and we certainly do want to not just focus on Germany and speak about Germany as an example, because I think the laggard start, this is something that everybody on this panel nodded to. So let's move a little bit out of Germany, or at least reflect on the discussion from perspectives that come out of the scientific literature that Thurid Hustedt knows well, on examples also of reform, public sector reform in other countries. I would like to know what type of initiatives actually work in creating some real change. Are they at the level of HR? Is it something about ending a project well, or at least doing something to overcome the political constraints that lead to ever more contradictory initiatives just piling up? Whatever angle you can take, what can we learn from other cases?
Yes, thank you. So I would like to take up this Germany as a laggard sentence one more time, because indeed, not only sort of per perception here, Germany is a laggard. Also, but from comparative public administration research, Germany is considered a laggard. So one of the sort of Bibles of comparative public administration is a book published in 2000 already, saying Germany is a laggard, or grouping Germany in the countries of being a laggard, and actually the worst of all of them in terms of administrative reform and public sector modernization. And then you would see several editions of this book coming out. It was one of the very few, very prominent books in public administration scholarship. And
what were the authors?
Gerd Buckert and Christopher Pollard. So in 2000, 2004, 2009, 2011, 2017, Germany continued to be a laggard. Right? So things changed a little bit, but by no means to the same degree as in other countries. And also not countries Germany can reasonably, or we can reasonably compare ourselves with. Right? So that is important. And the question is, why is that? And if you dig into public administration scholarship, you would find a couple of reasons. What I think is important, and very important also from today's perspective, is first and foremost that there is almost, or that there has been no political attention for administration, for the quality of administration, for the effectiveness, for structures and processes. There is absolutely no political understanding for that it is a political task and a political requirement to take care of the administration. I think this is deeply ingrained in the German political culture, also in the administrative culture. And I think it's related to an understanding coming from administrative law, that administration is just there to help implement political decisions, help implement public services, and there is a basic assumption that it just works. And in general, it does, right? Or at least it has, or it used to. For many, many years, it just used to work reasonably well. By comparative perspective, there are not so many scandals, for example, right? Go to the UK, go to Denmark, which is always considered a role model in public administration and administrative reform, and I think for good reasons. But you would find many more scandals compared to this country, for example, right? So if you talk to people not uninterested in public administration, they would just tell you, well, it works. Why should we do something about it? Also, it's public administration and administrative reform that is just another indicator of this political disinterest, you could say, has never been an issue in political campaigns or in elections, right? Not even in the state of Berlin, for example, where really there have been long complaints about a dysfunctional administration. In the recent election campaigns, it was only partly a topic, right? Never really been a priority, and a topic that politicians would think they could gain something of, right? So it's really not a topic of political contestation, political attention. That is different in other countries. Go to, for example, the UK, or one of my favorite examples, that is Denmark. So when you ask Cornelia, what are these countries doing differently that we consider like the front runners of administrative reforms with well-working and well-functioning administrations, then one, or what I would consider the core reason is that they have a constant sort of pay constantly attention to administrative reform, to the quality of their administration. They are constantly asking, oh, are we still fit for purpose? Are our administrations future-proof? Do we need to change organizational structures or processes, right? And that is the countries that is, you see this in Finland, Denmark, Australia, New Zealand. So these countries that really take good care of their administration and that have the political backing to do so. I think that is very important. And in my understanding, that is like the starting point, or really the prerequisite for then initiating all kinds of different sort of change projects or change mechanisms. But it's about political attention and having an awareness of that the quality of the public administration is a political topic or a policy field that one could and should sort of take care of and design.
Thank you, Thurid. Martin would like to react to something you just said, so I'll give him the floor.
Yes, well, having lived in the United States for many, many years, I must say one of the worst public administrations I've seen is there. But I think we actually fight with three obstacles. One is that our administration is still part of the Prussian hierarchy, this thinking at least. We are not actually a very service-oriented public administration. I think it's dramatically changing, so I'm more optimistic than pessimistic, but it still this thinking still remains. And that means we are part of an authoritarian government. We tell you what to do, and we are not there for you. I think this is still a mindset which needs to be changed. The second thing is what Nuria just pointed out, trust. But trust cannot be mandated. So you need this cultural mental change. I think as a German society, we have become very risk averse. We want to be secure to all sides. We want, actually prevent all mistakes that we can do. And if you do that, you create a system that might be a safe security system, but it's not meant to actually experiment things, to actually try out new things, to be open for out-of-the-box thinking. We have no mistake culture. So we want to avoid mistakes, and we do everything to avoid them. But what does that mean? At the end of the day, no one takes a risk. No one thinks out of the box. No one invents anything. It's just a safety system. So I think we are caught in this system, and we need to actually change it. And the third thing is that we are also always thinking in silos, and not, we just think vertically, not horizontally. And this is also a problem, because you need to think more horizontally and to bring things together. And I think this needs to be changed too. So this sounds very abstract, but if you actually nail it down, you can see also several of our proposals lead in the direction. For example, trust. If you have a butcher's shop, if you own that in Germany, you are mandated to actually report every month how you meet the hygiene standards. And you have to fill out pages and pages. And some middle and small enterprises for this reporting system need to actually employ someone, because it has become so immense and so complicated that you cannot just do it in a night shift. And this is a burden for many enterprises. So why do we actually mistrust everyone? Why don't we just say, okay, 98% of all butchers are, obedient. They comply with the law. And then you have actually a little bit more of control and stronger sanctions. So actually, if someone does not meet the standards of hygiene, then you can fine him or her. And if they still don't comply, you close the shop. But that does not mean that 98% of the people that comply are also obliged to actually, meet all those bureaucratic recommendations. So I think this needs to be changed, and this can be done also by small changes. Small changes can lead to mental and cultural changes.
Thank you very much, Martin. I have questions. You can clap. I have questions, but I realize I don't really need them because Michael also wanted to respond.
Well, it's really an issue I would like to ask Martin and Thurid about as well. In what way do you think the politicization of the German civil service is actually a problem here? Because I would say that the demands you lay out Yeah, we need to be forward-looking. We need to source policy ideas from empirical observation around the world. They demand managerial competence. They demand methodological competence that most of the time we don't have in our civil service. I mean, just by way of explaining, we have some very attractive positions in the civil service. The very highest level that you can not be fired from is often staffed. That's the director level, and that's often staffed with, let's say, the leftovers from former sort of senior advisors to the political leaderships, right? So I did, in preparation for this, I had some fun in looking at the organization chart of a large ministry I'm not going to name. It has around about 1,200 people working there. There's 17 directorates. 9 of the directors there used to work as a press speaker, the PR, head of PR, or personal advisor, chief of staff to a minister. None of them has any training in public administration, any training in empirical methods, or, and this is from personal knowledge, any training in sort of on-the-job management. But you know, this is something that every decision maker who comes in is probably, and this would be my question, was that a topic? I mean, did the former ministers that are part of that have anything to say on that? Because I'd be really, really interested in hearing from them. How do you go about the pressure of having worked with a very loyal team that existentially depended on you as a member of parliament? That you led your little team with like 3 advisors in parliament. All of a sudden, the dice fall in your favor, and you become federal minister, and you take them with you, of course, because that's the gravy train everyone's been waiting for to get on, right? Now they're there. If you can't promise that anymore, who's ever going to work for you?
So I'm reformulating. We have this Prussian bureaucracy that sounds like a very rational Weberian top-down arrangement, but it's really like the US spoil system that has politics at very different levels. And it's
an unhappy combination, I would say, of the politicization of the US and the permanent civil service of the UK.
Okay, Martin, short answer, and then back to Thurid, and then I'll...
Yeah, Michael, you've pointed out a very true question, and I admit I cannot answer it perfectly because we have talked about it, but not reflecting the past of the initiators. So what have they done wrong? Even though they know that they could have done better in some instances, and I think that was also the driving force for this initiative to make it better. But this is really true. The politicization is a problem. What we need is a better management, a better training on the job, but also pre-training. We need a different culture of management, of leading, of leadership. This will not change from one day to the other, but I'm hopeful that the new ministry and all the others ministries too will see this actually as a top point to be changed, that we need new management leadership and new thinking that they install in their administration. So what we have proposed is in our report is also, people coming from outside, people changing between the ministries, taking in the best, doing, creating incentives for people who think out of the box and who want to take on leadership with new thinking. We need also a new tariff system probably, and we probably need also a new, whatever, Dienstrecht, however you call that in English, which means, the laws ruling the people that are being installed. They're all civil servants mainly. And this is a very strict system. This needs to be broken up.
Thurid?
Yes, thank you. So first, going back to Prussia, indeed, I fully agree. In many respects, when you look at the German federal ministries here in Berlin, most of them usually are indeed structured exactly to the same way as they used to be in Prussia, right? Even the new one is going to be structured like the one in Prussia back in the days, yes?
Even the ones in Bavaria.
Yes, so all ministries in these countries are structured like the Prussian ones, right? And when you look at, for example, the first version of the Joint Rules of Procedures of the federal government, which is the GGO in German, the Gemeinsame Geschäftsordnung der Bundesministerien, the first version was published or written in 1926, and that was just a sort of codification of current practice. So that has been like how they did public administration for like decades before. And when you compare this with today's version, you find differences, but you find very many similarities still, right? So that is just to sort of illustrate a bit more what Martin pointed to, the similarities or the sort of long shadow from Prussia that we are still working with or working on. And the idea of the political civil servants also comes from Prussia, by the way, and was initiated in Prussia. And what does this mean, actually, for those of you who are not sort of experts or nerds of German public administration, particularly federal administration? That is what we are talking about here in particular, right? It means it's a particular paragraph in the German civil service law saying that the two top levels in all federal ministries, that is the Staatssekretär, so the beamtete Staatssekretär, the administrative state secretary, the top civil servant, as well as the second level, that is the heads of division, Abteilungsleiter, they are political civil servants. That means they can be sent, as it's called, sent to temporary retirement at any point in time without given prior notice. In reality, that means exactly what Michael pointed to, that, of course, new ministers exchange the two top levels, at least to some degree. Not every minister sort of changes all state secretaries and all heads of division in their ministry, but what we also know from empirical research, that has the share of those exchanged after a change of government has sort of increased drastically since the late 1960s, actually. Up to then, that has hardly been used, this instrument. Ever since, it has more and more and more. And secondly, also that is also part of it, what we also see is over the past sort of 20, 25 years, what has also happened that more and more people from the outside were brought into the ministries when a new minister came in, right? Early on, it was people from or other civil servants working on particular topics that then were sort of promoted once a new minister came in, and the other ones were sent to what we call temporary retirement, which is usually, or which used to be retirement. But with the change in the sort of selection behavior of politicians, those top political civil servants have become younger and younger, so they need to find another job after being sent to temporary retirement, which is for 3 years, this temporary retirement, which also had an effect that some directors or Unterabteilungsleiter, which is the final sort of permanent level, reject an offer to become promoted because they don't want to be fired just 3 years later or so on when they're in perhaps their mid or late 40s. Right? So that is an important part of it and an important complication. On the other hand, I think what's important and what's in value of having this instrument of the political civil servant, or at least some politicization mechanism, is indeed that you initiate or you establish a mechanism of what we in public administration scholarship call political responsiveness. Right? Because what's very important for a civil servant is that the civil servant is expected to provide good technical advice to the leading politicians. And they do this, right, in general speaking. But what's also important from a political perspective, that the civil service helps them realize their political preferences or their policy preferences. That is also very important from a democratic theory point of view, right? Because we want in democracy that it's the minister who steers the ministry and not the other way around. However, there is, of course, in theory, a high risk this could happen. Michael just quoted, there are 1,200 civil servants, one minister, right? So the mechanism of politicization can also help ministers to sort of run run the ministry. That's very important. And make sure the civil service does indeed what they want and is also aware of what they want. So I think that is important. However, that can be done in very many ways. That is another question. And then what happens to these people, everything what we call Aktionabendssonne, right? So that is right when a new government comes in, that people close to the former minister are sort of sent or promoted to other positions. That is a different story. In general, I think it's good to have a political responsiveness mechanism at the top levels of the civil service. Moreover, and then I'm done, what I also agree with, and what's very important, I think, with Germany, one of the dimensions Germany lags behind is indeed in managerial and leadership competencies in the civil service. Many other countries, and that are the countries that are far ahead of us in administrative reforms, have from the late 1990s on, roughly speaking, sort of started to train and educate their civil servants in leadership and managerial competencies, and particularly at the leadership level. So the traditional civil servant who was a policy expert in some area has sort of been trained or retrained or additionally equipped with managerial skills and competencies. And there was a growing expectation to really also consider a ministry as something to manage, not just as something where a couple of technocrats sit and help the minister. And that has never happened in this country.
Thank you very much. One example that I have heard that I'll just share because it stays in my head as an image is a HR person responsible for HR in the defense ministry in Germany saying we do want to train and innovate also in the way that we lead in the ministry. And under Ursula von der Leyen, a lot of design thinkers came in and worked with the generals working in the defense ministry who were moderately amused at having chair circles and lots of post-it notes in order to rethink how military administration is done, but it may have had some effects afterwards, so I'm sure there's room for some improvement. Nuria, you wanted to come in, and then I want to open so that the audience can also come in with questions, but you get the
Yeah, thank you. I was thinking that I think, a lot is going wrong within ministries and also within governments, but I think we need to zoom out and also look at the role of a citizen and what citizens can expect of governments, but also what governments can expect of citizens. Because I do think that citizens should play an active role in, I don't know, like forming or like upholding democracy. And I have the feeling that over the last years, it's in Germany at least, it's become more like citizens have become consumers of government and governmental services, and I do think that a government, like it's its role and main function to work and to give, I don't know, to hand out like tax redistributions and to take care of a lot of things. Otherwise, you would want to, like French Revolution, like make everything collapse. But I do think that an active citizen is really, really what's needed in here, and that citizens cannot just lean back and be like, oh, this is not working, that is not working. What is ever working here for me? It's not only about you, like it's about a society and citizens coming together. So I think there's 2 points to what I would like to add. First of all, citizens also have an active role to play in this, and then also maybe let's all be a bit less egoist and look at a society together and be like, okay, what would be good for us for overall, and not only what is good for me. How can I like get the most out of this?
Thank you very much. So you did a lot of additional clapping. We usually don't have it, but I very much like it, so I want to encourage it. Let me just summarize that we have 3 topics that I saw coming out of this discussion. We have public administration as the problem solvers that are actually trying to improve the conditions of our society, and that is not the same as the political role and work we see here in the circulation and the responsiveness. Of course, administrations are the result, or doing work as the result of elections, where you should have a capacity in the administration to be responsive to political leanings. And then the question of how this apparatus actually meets the citizens and where it meets it. We talked about a very Prussian, very federal state that went all the way up to presidents and our federal ministries, but actually it goes all the way down. And what we also know is citizens meet the state not here in Berlin, but in their cities, in the Rathaus, in the town hall, thank you, in the town hall. So the counter where most people meet the state is a very different one from the one we've described here, and we don't understand enough of how that encounter at the counter in the town halls happened, but that is where trust is being built or lost, and there's something about how all of these levels relate. That, and of course the letters we receive in the mail and don't understand because they're written in some bureaucratic German that even the law degree graduates of us have a hard time tapping into. But different sets of issues that can help us to talk about problem solving, the political connections, and the trust that comes out of an hopefully agile and effective state. And I'd like to open to the audience, because we did in our defense, we said state in Germany, we dragged you into Prussian history, so we can now hopefully with your questions get out and have a broader perspective as well. Who would like to ask any one of our members a question? And the mic is coming around. And please present yourself and identify your ministry of preference if you want.
Yeah, hi, my name is Nicholas. I'm an alumni here from the MPP and the PhD program. And I work as the head of government innovation at City Lab Berlin. So I work with all of the Senate Chancellery, the Senate departments here equally. I love them all. I wonder, listening to you and also following the debate since years, right? I'm very happy that this topic now has the attention that it gets, because we've been working since 6 years in projects on digitalization and also in government modernization here in Berlin. And it's really, there's so many things you would need to change, right? And this term of a cultural change or Kulturwandel in the German administration, this has been kicked around since years, but it never really happens. Like, everybody says it from above, and I know it's a lot depending on who is in leadership, but the actual Kulturwandel depends on so many small things. You go into a ministry and you have to bring your own coffee machine because they don't do that. Which company would ever do that if they want to make it an attractive place for employees? There's so many small things that I wonder, are we not radical enough? Should we not at some point scrap most of the rules that we give, see which rules are actually necessary and redesign them all? Can we have this radical moment for change, or do we need to go that way that Martin, you described? You said a lot of small changes slowly lead to change, but isn't that taking too long?
Thank you. Let's collect, if you allow me. I have 2 hands over here. Let's make sure we get both of these questions.
Thank you very much. My name is Daniel Gafka-Mendoza. I'm with the Berlin Senate right now on PY, actually, so we do work with the City Lab. My question goes also into the direction of trust that we mentioned earlier, and also, I guess, into the direction of rule rewriting. To what extent do we also need sort of a different attitude towards the working level of administration? Because there are all these regulations, and these also fall back on the working level that then, is very much bound up in all that instead of actually implementing policies. And maybe would it be useful to add a cost-benefit analysis to every rule? What do you think about that? Thanks.
Hi, Oliver Launstein, former colleague of Michael, actually, still a civil servant, and I have to wholeheartedly agree that I haven't met a single civil servant in my time in the public sector who isn't highly committed, who isn't highly motivated, who doesn't want to do things better. Most public servants take the service really to their heart. One barrier that I think might be there is that politics is inherently slightly myopic, as in there's an election cycle, and of course there is, we're living in a democracy, but that incentivizes doing things that will succeed, and that will succeed in a realistically 3-year time frame, when a new government comes in. And that incentivizes picking low-hanging fruit, and it incentivizes picking fruit that aren't risky. So then that makes it hard to say, these are projects we need to tackle that will take 10 years to do, and they might still fail. Any insights on how we might get towards those projects? Because my feeling is a few of them would be direly needed.
Thank you very much. Can I continue collecting? You can all pick your favorite questions, but let me just, because I know that afterwards we'll run out of time, and it's nice to have the room participate.
Hi, my name is Yvonne Dippmann. I'm an alumni from the Hertie Stiftung, 2010, a long time ago. I'm an artist and a designer, and also an energy healer. And I have to say, when I was younger, I really read newspaper every morning at 8 o'clock in the morning. And at 9, I was exhausted. So, and now, when you talk about to have a Kulturwandel and a trust and a kind of like attractiveness and becoming an active political citizen, I think politics are very unsexy. Like, you open the news, all you hear are like scandals, and you also get to know things which don't work. It's very negative. Also the pictures, the people, low energy, problems, gray suits. It's really not a place where a sane human being wants to be involved in. You have a lot of personalities or personal issues between people in ministries. And honestly, I would like to be more active in politics, but it's not something I've studied. I'm not an expert. I don't need to have an opinion on everything which is being discussed in ministries. If it's like in economy, politics, like other countries, I'm not an expert. So why should I be involved and attacked with all of this stuff every day in the news? I would like to hear more things about where I can be involved as a citizen in a positive attitude, where I see there's actually a perspective for me to have an impact with a positive resonance of my doing as a citizen. So my question is, how can you make this whole environment of politics more attractive, like visually and also content-wise? Because if I read only negative information every day, why would I be engaged and optimistic and into it? Why? There are like better places to be in life and to achieve something. And also my lifespan is limited. Everyone's, and my colleagues who are in politics from the Hertie School back then, they are so engaged, but they're also burned out. They say after 10 years, you know, I had a lot of ideology, a lot of power, but I have no energy anymore. Burnout with like 44, 42, cancer diagnosis, whatever, like hard stuff. So the thing is, like, I think the structure should be in a way transformed to make it a nicer, more attractive place, in my opinion.
So let's stop here. Oliver is a Hertie alumni too, yes. Yeah. Thank you for self-identifying. You can pick the questions from the visually attractive politics that we need to get to some of the other questions, and give me a sign if you'd like to answer one. We'll also, if we have the time, take another round of questions. Martin.
I start with the small things. If you start with small things, doesn't it take too long? I don't think so. I think a lot of those, as I said before, cultural change you cannot mandate. You know, you cannot say, we change the culture this way and everyone follows you. I think it needs incentives, it needs incremental steps. I give you just a very personal example, and when I joined the federal presidency, and I was leading the Department of Strategic Communication and Speeches for a while, I came there was no coffee machine. There was not even a jour fixe where people just could meet and talk whatever, you know, is on their mind, except, you know, their duty of the day. And there was no evaluation system that you talk to the people about what do they actually want to achieve for themselves? And then as their head, what you would like them to achieve and how can you help them to reach the goals. So I started with a coffee machine and went from there step by step for the time I was there. And it actually, and it was not a revolution, but it changed a little bit the work atmosphere and also the willingness to be engaged. And so I think you need those steps actually also to change the culture. And what I also think is in the administration and what is missing, and this is a part of management, now with every department you work with, you need a collaborative system, but you also need to actually set goals. What do you want to, with your team, what do you want to achieve at the end of the year? What is your goal? And then to talk about that, and should be vice versa. I think that people that serve in your team should also be free to criticize their leadership, and if you do it anonymously. For example, I led for about 10 years the political department at my former newspaper, Die Zeit, and I also introduced the evaluation system, and I thought I should be evaluated too, but who of the so-called subordinates comes and says, you're doing this wrong? So I put a box there and said, everyone can just put a piece of paper and you know, write something on it, and then I read it, and I know what I can do better if you don't, you know, have the guts to tell it me directly.
Thank you. I saw Thurid's hand, and Nuria, I think, is giving me a sign as well, and Michael wants to come in. So everybody, 3-minute answers.
Yes, thank you. I also would like to come back to the Kulturwandel or cultural change question, because that is also one of the sort of very established findings in administrative reform scholarships. So one of the key reasons why administrative reforms fail is indeed why, so single reforms, because it was important, because they failed to really change the culture in terms of how to run a certain process or how to provide a certain service. And that is often, so it's relatively easy to change structures and rules. It takes some political energy and some will, and yes, but it's relatively easy to move around like boxes of organizational charts. But really to change the way things are done is a different story. And one of the sentences you hear very often in administration, and particularly in Germany, is, das haben wir immer schon so gemacht, right? So that's how we do things. We've always done like this, so full stop, right? So that is not going to change. And that is what cultural change is about, and that is the sort of hard stuff behind reform. I think that is that's important. That is also very established. And maybe one sentence one response to the working level. That is, yes, I think the working level needs to get more attention, and particularly also in terms of career development. So rather more from an HR perspective, career development, leadership, what are career paths, what is promotion. That is not really catered for very well, I would say, in German administrations at various levels. Also maybe the election cycle, and that is my last sentence then from my 3 minutes. I think if you look at other countries like Finland, for example, there you can really learn and study they have election cycles as well, right? But still they are able to develop the country in a sort of long-term perspective to also think about, for example, public sector innovation reforms over longer periods of time. And they have a very established process for this. But it's also, I think, part of the political culture, again, that politicians are committed to that, and that it's also expected from them to just do that.
Nuria.
Yeah, I would like to respond to question 1, 2, and 4. I'll start with 1, City Lab.
That's a very efficient organization of remembering the question.
Yeah, just today, no. Well, it was about radical change. Do we need radical change or not was question 1. And I think yes. And if you look at the ministries in the United Kingdom, you can see that they do it very differently, much more efficient. They're really open to failure, fail fast, and like go forward. So if you look at role models around, there are role models, and I do think that we should have a more radical change. So I can just confirm that. To question 2, about adding a cost-benefit analysis, whether that would make sense. I can say that in one of the recommendations is actually to make processes more transparent. So to always have a visualization of the process that wants to be adapted or that people are planning to adapt. And I think this could, it's not a cost-benefit analysis per se, but it already goes in this direction of making things at least as clear as if you want to do something, if you cannot visualize it, better not do it. Like, it means that you have a problem there. So I think absolutely. Question 4, I feel your frustration. I've been quite active in politics myself for the last years, and I actually am not anymore in a political party. So I can feel it. I can absolutely relate. I had 2 thoughts on this. The first one is that politics is also not there to make you feel good. It's not politics' role for you to be optimist all the time. This is something that you, on an individual level, I think, need to do, and it's your responsibility. This sounds maybe quite harsh, but I do think that we cannot expect also the world to make us feel great every day. But I think that it's really important to collect one's resources and to think about which battles do I pick. For example, I was quite active in politics, but now I'm much more like on a small local level where I can maybe monitor and like help 2 or 3 people get into a scholarship program who come from disadvantaged families. So my contribution is maybe small, but I do have a small impact, and that really helps me. Maybe it's similar to the coffee machine. Like, at least you have some Spielraum, something to do, right? And then one recommendation, there's a really great newsletter. It's called Good News, and it's really helpful to just look at good news.
Thank you, Michael.
Right. So first, I would like to celebrate Nuria and her stance on civic engagement, because I think that's really the way to go. I really do think so. And you asked the question, why? Yeah, really. Yvonne, you asked the question, why should you get involved? My answer would be very simple: because you live here with others. That, I think, is a way. And I would say it's actually easier than ever before. Every day you can take part in numerous consultation processes already in the city of Berlin. You may want to talk to the, sorry, I forgot your name. Yeah, to Niklas about how they're designed, because I think there's maybe some way to go. But I feel a bit frustration when people complain about, say, the renovation of a street in a neighborhood here in Berlin. That it's all wrong, and then it turns out, well, actually there's been a consultation process 3 years ago that 93 people took part in out of the 7,000 that live in the blocks that are concerned. So but it was there, it was online, it was you don't have to do much. You can send a short, quick message. You can answer a questionnaire. You can write to your local representative. So you don't actually have to be in the party political machinery, I think, to be active. And my impression, at least from my personal interactions as a citizen in those processes, is that actually at the municipal level, those feedbacks count. And if you do take part, you also have a good reason to then go and ask, well, if something's decided another way, why is that actually the case? I think that's on a much more solid basis once you've actually taken part in a consultation than after the fact without having taken part. So just that, and I think that really goes to the point also, Nuria, that you said before, the consumption of politics, where yes, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's just my also, of course, very limited perspective because of my work, but I do often feel caught up in conversations where I have a feeling, well, there's somebody who wants to go into the supermarket of political solutions, pick the one they like out of the shelf, and then pay for that, and only that. But that's not how it works. Politics is not a product, it's a process. And It's not about consuming it. You don't get it. You make it. That's I think a crucial part. So that I wanted to say. And the other first two questions, I just want to say I think management competence really matters in making change. And I don't know what radical means. I want to say, like, I don't want radical change, because where I see radical change happening, it comes together with a political agenda that, as a democratic citizen, I don't feel comfortable with. So I wonder, what do we mean by radical? What I would like to see is clearly measurable policy goals that are actually implemented in a competent way. That's a very, very unambitious, demand, but I'd really like that to happen. And more trust in the working level. This is something that goes back to the politicization that I mentioned. I think that is a really big problem, because what I meant weren't the political civil servants. I meant the ones below. When you're in the running for a leadership position, even if it's a head of unit or director level, right? So these are not the ones that can be fired. You can be sure that someone involved in a selection process is going to find out if you're a member of a party and which party, for sure. I think that because of this, now imagine you're a politician, you've been in opposition for a generation, finally get to the trough, right? And so everyone comes along. You're there, you arrive with your leadership team. Those are the people you trust. Let's say you bring, a total of 15, 20 people, deputy ministers and their personal advisors, blah, 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 speakers, right? So you arrive in the ministry. And what do you know about that ministry? You know every director and most heads of unit have been selected, at least also, because of their party membership in another party than your own. So how much trust do you bring to your working level when you get in there? So this is why I think this is really a big problem. And I'm really wondering if this is an underregulated phenomenon where you should really ask, should it be, is it really wise that you can be a civil servant and a member of a political party at the same time? And I think that's a question one should ask, but I'll leave it at that.
It's a question we also ask about political science professors, but I'll leave that for another day. I would like to get 2 more questions in, because I saw 3, 4, maybe just let's collect under 1 minute statements, and then I'll give the floor back. Martin wanted to come in. I said he can't jump the queue, so you're up first, but short.
Very quick question. I'm Linnea, also MPP alumni, work in the German Ministry for Development Cooperation, and my question is on Fehlerkultur. That sort of was coming through, because I've talked about this with many colleagues where we are afraid if we make a mistake. We have a lot of safeguards and control in development cooperation. If there is a scandal, the problem is big, whereas if there is no scandal but the process is faster and easier, we don't really get a lot of praise or a lot of appreciation for that. So basically, how do you really practically implement failing forward Fehlerkultur? That's my question.
Thank you very much. Around you were hands, so yes, very good.
Thanks. I'm Moritz. I'm also an MPP alumni. I work with the ministry in North Rhine-Westphalia. And my question would be, did you consider the way budgeting works in the federal state and also on the state level? I think the municipalities, they got a little bit better, but I think the process of like budgeting to the ends and not like saying how much money do you have per year for copy paper and cars, but set a goal, give money to that and leave it to the people to get that. Did you consider that? And what are your thoughts on that? Thanks.
Thank you. Turn around because there are hands behind you.
Hi, thank you. I'm Helena, and I used to work for the Croatian public sector, and we all pitched in to buy an office coffee machine there. I don't work for the public sector here, but I work in the public sector adjacent organization. We work in Germany on German topics, and in 99 out of 100 cases, I'm the only non-native German speaker in the room. So my question is, are there any initiatives or progress in diversifying the German public sector on different levels, especially the municipal ones? Thank you.
At the municipal level. I saw at least one hand over there. So, or if you have somebody who makes you gives you the eye, then hand over the micro, and then over on the left.
Just really quickly, my name's Nathan Bassett, and I'm an MPP from 2015. I currently work for the city of Oakland, California, on their budget. And if you want to talk about
Good luck.
scandal, yeah, no, it's bad. But the question I had is, how much of this, have you looked at this at the local level, at the municipal level? And then just really quickly to the comment from before about wanting to get involved, I would say, be kind, find things that you're passionate about in your community. Working for local government, I have people talking to me about potholes, about all kinds of things, and it's really where you get the most interaction with government. But if there's a low level of trust, it's very, very, you can tell, because I've worked in different governments, San Antonio, one just outside of DC, and it's very noticeable.
And I'm sorry, no, we're short on time, but I do want to have a visually attractive pothole story that I want to put in there. In France, potholes are called chickens' nests, and there's a biker movement that draws attention to the chicken's nest every year by putting a nest with a stuffed chicken in the potholes that they'd like to draw attention to. It's a huge media success because it's visually actually very attractive. So that's maybe one idea as well to get involved. If you're a biker, even better. On the left, and then we'll give a very quick lightning round answer session.
Thank you, but I think I'd rather yield my time and hear the panel's responses.
Thank you, that's kind of you. Okay, lightning session responses will go from left to right, so you get the final one, and you can also say what I haven't let you come in with afterwards. Thurid first.
Then I pick the diversity question because, yes, there are initiatives. I think particularly at the Länder level, you would find initiatives for diversifying, for including the share of civil servants with a migrant background, for example, but also, for example, to when it comes to people with all kinds of handicaps. So there are diversity programs, and I think at the Länder level, you see this more often. I'm not so sure about the federal level. That may be a question for Michael.
In my team, I have a British, a Belgian, and a French citizen. That's at the Chancellery where we need top-level security clearance, and it's possible. Most of them are also German citizens, but it's yeah, well, you know, my view is like, yeah, the processes sometimes take a bit longer, but then, you know, just take decisions and hire the people you want to have, you know, in a team. So that's not actually a hurdle. I think, however, we don't have initiatives on that, like, to be clear. For the agriculture, I want to say, I mean, our tradition is, you know, if you define the process well enough, nobody needs to take a decision. And that leads to tremendous errors. How many, I mean, Look at how much money we've spent on digitizing administration in the last 10 years, and then try to use a digital service. And then tell me we're not good at making mistakes. I think we're excellent at making mistakes. We're excellent at making mistakes. We're not good at correcting them. And that's, I think, what we need to talk about there.
Thank you very much. Nuria.
Yeah, my mic is there. Yeah, I think for the local participation or like on municipality level, I can just quickly share a quite funny example. I was getting really pissed that cars in my street drive way too fast, and it's like my apartment is not located in the high-end, I don't know, Savini-Platz, Charlottenburg area. So it was, I think, quite diverse and like not socially or socioeconomically like the most privileged people, and the cars were driving 50 kilometers per hour or more, and I was getting pissed, and I thought, if you constantly hear these cars, like it creates such a disadvantage for everyone learning, for all the young like school kids, you know, trying to sleep and then also maybe doing their homework in the whole street. So I wrote the police department and I asked whether we cannot reduce the speed, whether we cannot put it to 30. And I didn't get an answer right away, but they were like, well, they said, okay, we're looking at this, thank you. And I said, maybe there's a lot of accidents happening here too. Like, you should really look into this. And then 2 years later, I was already in Brussels. I received, on my way to work, I received an email saying, we actually reduced the speed limit to 30. Thank you for your participation in this. And now the street is like a 30. I mean, it's not only me, but I think there were a lot of maybe different people riding or something happening, but it can add up. So I would just like give some encouragement to just write this one email. I couldn't believe my eyes. Like, really, I was fascinated. This was really, really a beautiful moment. yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Martin, you get the final word.
I have to confess that I sometimes get frustrated when I have to only drive 30 all the time. No, I totally agree. But back to the budgeting question. We have touched this in our report, because a lot of decisions that are being taken, especially on the federal level, have a huge impact on the local level, because they have to carry out the decisions, and sometimes they get a budget for some time, but not forever, but they still have to carry out the duties. So this is a problem that needs to be touched, and there must be a much larger participation of local levels also in federal decision making. And I was surprised, but also I welcomed it that at least the coalition treaty names this problem. And I think it's for the first time that they see it, but it needs to be actually put into force, that the communal level has a larger say. And to your question about where do people come in, I would hope that, you know, local levels would have more like sounding boards of citizens that can actually monitor them if they actually do a good public service and if they meet, you know, citizens' needs. I think this is something that we should encourage and that should be instrumentalized much more than it happens nowadays. I know that some communities have it, but I think it should be a general goal to have that. To the question of radicalization, I already said that I'm more for incremental change, and because I had to meet, for our initiative, I had to meet the unions, and when I got there, they thought I was Elon Musk with an electric saw, and we would, just decapitate all administrations. And I said, no, that's not what we do. We actually want to work with you. And actually, you need changes, and also drastic changes, and you also need technology as a help. You need artificial intelligence, because in Germany, in the next years, there will be 1,300,000 to 1,500,000 empty positions in the administration that cannot be filled, because we have a demographic problem, and the boomer generation will soon retire, and there's no one to fill the gap. So you need the help actually not to fulfill your duties, and not to have a burnout syndrome at the end of the day. Last comment.
Swiss lightning.
Last comment on political parties. Yes, civic engagement is good, is necessary, but you also need political parties. You need people in the political parties. Certainly political parties need to change and to open up, but we have a representative system, and this system has served us and still serves us well. So I would encourage all people also to engage in political parties, because we need a common we. Our problem is also that we all think in particular interests. You know, everyone thinks my problem is the biggest problem, and we are not actually, compromise becomes a dirty word, but compromise is the essence of a society. And I think we need to work on a common we. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me list it. Thank you very much to all four of you for a very inspiring, forward-looking panel with a good dose of cynicism and criticism. I think this was very helpful. Thank you very much again to the Hertie Fellows and Friends and our Alumni Affairs team for getting us together here, and the comms team, of course, as always, for supporting us. And thank you to the audience for the inspiring questions, the very good solutions. I think we've understood we need a coffee machine, so that's an easy fix. And there are some other issues that you've raised. So also a round of applause for you from yourself to yourself, but this is really a very nice discussion. Thank you.